Welcome to Two Chairs, the conversation that explores issues of real life and offers real help to those in need. Capillary Human Services proudly presents this program as a public service and invites you to pull up a chair and join us for the conversation. Welcome to Two Chairs. I'm your host, Rusty Jabbo, and today we're going to be talking about a very real topic, the holiday blues. What happens during the holidays? We should be festive and feeling good, but that's not always the case. And joining me today is John Nosacka, who's the Director of Mental Health Services here at Capillary Human Services. John, thank you for joining us. First question out of the blocks is, are the holiday blues real?
Yeah, I think so. I think that especially when we talk about the holiday blues that are occurring at this time of year, as the weather gets colder, people start to stay indoors a little more. Their routines and their exercise are changing, and then you find that people find themselves in situations that are, extremes. They're going from just their regular normal days of working, and then they find themselves having days off in the middle of the week, and seeing people that they haven't seen for a year, and all of these things can destabilize some people. Yeah, so I really think it is a real thing.
And in your experience, let's talk a little bit about your background and your training and your credentials.
Yeah, so I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I got my master's degree in social work from LSU, and that was a few years ago. That was in '94, and I've been a licensed clinical social worker since '96. And I've worked in a variety of areas. I've worked with people who were very ill in the hospital, some people who were dying. I've worked with substance abuse a lot. I've worked with people with mental health problems. I've done case management. I've done therapy. I've done lots of things in my career.
I read a statistic from the National Association of Mental Illness, NAMI, and they said that people with mental illness, that their conditions worsen during the holidays. What's been your experience in working with people, particularly as the holidays approach, during and even after? And what are some of the dynamics of what goes on?
Yeah, when I think of that, and you and I were talking earlier, and I have trouble separating my two lives, because in one life I wear a hat as a mental health professional. And on the other part of my life, I wear a hat as a recovering person, as a person who's had their own problems with substance use and with mental illness. And I see this issue from both directions. So from the standpoint of a clinician, I've watched people go through this. I've watched people who, as the fall comes and the weather gets nice and people start to really enjoy being outside again, and their outdoor exercises and these impromptu gatherings that are happening, and they're excited because they're getting their pumpkin spice lattes again. And then the weather starts to change, and it gets a little rainier, it gets a little cooler. You start to spend more time indoors. You just spend all this nice time outside, and maybe now you're not seeing your normal friends as much as you did. Your support system is having a little distance that's coming about, and then the holidays come along and brings with them different people, different situations. There's all these expectations that come with the holidays, and it's great when everything turns out great. But when things don't turn out great, then that irony between what you expected of a holiday and what actually happens in real life sometimes is just really jarring. Mm-hmm. And so if you take, just the seasonal changes, and then you add in the expectations and sometimes the disappointments that come with expectations, I think this season for some people, there's good reasons why it's a problem.
You talked about your background before you had your training and your credentials. There was a time in your life when you were like us. I'm not trained in that field of science. And so I'd like to talk today from that standpoint of someone who is not clinically trained. Yeah. What should we be looking for? What should we be looking for in others that we can help And what are some of the things we can do because we don't necessarily know how or what to look for?
Back when I was a young adult and was trying to cope with adjusting to becoming an adult and my own problems, I had really no idea what to expect when holidays came around. And I think that's one of the things that trips a lot of people up is they don't plan ahead for what comes with the holidays, for the changing social situations, for the changing schedules, for the changing people around you. There's this experience of nostalgia that for good or ill. Sometimes people think of, oh, Christmases with my grandparents were always wonderful, and then they get into adulthood, and they miss some of those experiences. We have this expectation that there are going to be days where, whether it's a Sunday or a holiday or a weekend or whatever the day, but it's a day where, it's going to be just fine because we're not working. And what winds up happening is that one of the things that work brings with it is structure and stability to some of our lives. And so when I think about a Sunday or a holiday, I think about the expectation of there aren't many. Mm-hmm. And that's where, for a recovering person, that may be where they get tripped up. It's because without planning ahead, they left their lives open to chaos or just things being undetermined ahead of time and finding themselves in situations that they didn't expect and didn't want.
And that's one of those instances where we can take control. We can set aside some hope, some anticipation, some things that we want to do for ourselves. What are some things that people can do when they find themselves in a situation like that?
I'm never without choices. And I'm never not responsible for my own feelings and my own happiness. And this is, some of this is I say out of my mouth when I'm wearing my social worker's hat, but I think I mean this more from the standpoint of working from a recovering person's standpoint. I'm responsible for whether this holiday is a good day or a bad day for me. And so going into things ahead of time, if I know I'm going into a situation that in the past has been difficult for me, I need to plan on what are those ways that I'm going to be able to take care of myself in these situations. And for me, what that meant was sometimes I'd make a plan. And the plan would be, I'm going to spend 2 hours, and I'm only going to stay longer if I'm enjoying myself. And if I'm not enjoying myself, I'm going to get out of that situation. I'm going to talk to a friend ahead of time, and I'm going to let them know, hey, I'm going over to this situation, and keep your phone on. I may need to give you a call if I find myself in a jam. Whether it's I find myself getting uncomfortable with the conversations I'm having, or I'm finding myself in situations where there are things happening that I shouldn't be a part of. It's nice to know that I have somebody who's expecting my call and has already assured me that they're going to be there for me if I need to call them.
So planning ahead is something that someone can do. We talked about a spouse or a loved one can help us with that as well.
Oh, sure, yeah. I was thinking about a movie where the couple, as they went to the different family homes, they had a safe word or a code word that they would use with each other, and what that word meant was that they had reached their limit, that it was time to go. And they had lots of comical scenes, and they made it very funny. But I think of that in a very real way. That's a very good adaptive technique. If your accountability partner is your spouse or significant other, then planning ahead means saying to each other, I'm going to respect your comfort, your feelings, and when you get to the point where before you get to your breaking point, let me know, and I'll help you to get out of there. And I want the same help in return.
Yeah. What are some of the most common challenges you've seen that people face during the holidays? What are the things that are likely to get them into trouble or issues that they may be having?
one of the things I think is, again, it's expectations. It's thinking that a family member is going to be a certain way or a loved one is going to be a certain way, and then on the holiday, at the event, it turns out they're not that way. We think that they're, we expect that this is going to be better this year, and the person's, some of the same old behaviors that we had problems with before, where they come back. It's not always our behaviors; it could be the other person's behaviors. But we see them again at a time where we're really hoping they weren't going to show up. Yeah, and it's kind of, it's in a way, it's almost, it's not unfair to expect someone to behave, to act right, to mind their manners. That's not an unfair expectation. What may be an unfair expectation is when someone has showed me that they're not trustworthy, to be upset when they're not trustworthy again.
Or to respect your needs.
Right, and by not trustworthy, that's what I mean. Someone who maybe doesn't respect the boundaries of others. And so these are all situations where I'm responsible for how I get out of them. And if I find myself in a situation that's uncomfortable like that, I'm responsible for taking care of myself. And whether it's setting personal boundaries with other people or saying, okay, I've had a great time, but it's time to go. That's what I need to do.
You talked about being a person in recovery. What are some of the triggers that people face during the holidays?
Well, the one I think of initially is, being exposed to things that I would rather avoid. So
like,
that's, when it's substance abuse, it's being exposed to substance use. But when it's mental health and depression, it's being exposed to other people that are exhibiting the attitudes or the behaviors that I don't want for myself. And that doesn't mean that we act unsupportive to people who are experiencing their own anxieties, their own depression. But it does mean that when I know that I'm going into situations like that I find ways to balance that. I bring, if I know I'm going to be in a situation which creates anxiety for me, maybe I bring someone with me, like a partner, an accountability or partner, or a spouse or a friend or someone who can help me to remember that that I have a life outside of whatever this situation means to me.
What else would you counsel people for the holidays? Ways that they can cope and have a festive time or a good time within the realm of what they can tolerate and what they really want and need for their lives?
So far we've been, an implication in what we've been talking about has been about what to do when you're around family and friends. But there are some people who are going to find themselves where they don't have a lot of family and friends to be around. Or maybe they want some experiences to balance out their experience of family and friends. For those people, I'd say I still would prefer you not be alone. And whether it's you seek out some other support groups or recovery groups, or whether you find ways to go and be of service to other people. Whether that means volunteering with an agency or a group that's serving meals, or some people will prefer to help out with animals rather than people. There's always an animal shelter or an adoption group that's looking for help.
I know churches are very active, faith-based organizations very active this time of year. So there are things that people can find that can give them meaning where maybe they aren't feeling that they're otherwise happy, or maybe happy isn't the right word, but fulfilled, or a place where they're at peace.
Well, I'm thinking about the one of the big challenges for when you have a mental illness or something else that's affecting you mentally and emotionally is how easy it becomes to ruminate over just how comfortable you are, to become, obsessive over how bad you feel. That's one of the, one of the big challenges to having these kinds of problems, is that you find yourself spending hours and hours just thinking about, I feel so bad. And going out and doing something that's a service to others is a way, not only does it, help you to build gratitude for what you do have in your life, but it also is just time where you're not thinking about yourself, where you're occupied in something that's worthwhile and meaningful and helpful.
And it's a way to meet other people,
Absolutely.
To have positive human experiences,
Sure.
and to, like you said, to make a contribution to yourself by serving someone else and helping them and seeing the benefit that they're getting. It feeds us.
Absolutely. It feeds us, it feeds our self-esteem and our self-worth. For a lot of us, it feeds our faith. Yeah, there are a lot of benefits to that.
Is there anything else that we need to talk about that would be helpful for people?
Well, if you feel like you don't have family and friends or spouse or someone like that, you don't have a recovering community of your own, or maybe you've never had problems before, but this is the first year where something happens. I think you mentioned earlier, like the experience of losing someone. Maybe this is the first year you're going to experience these holidays without mom or without dad or without someone else who was special to you. Then where do you go? And there are lots of resources you can find over the phone and online for that. The first one I think about is the 988 number, the new suicide prevention hotline.
That's some have referred to that as the 911 of mental health.
Right. And I think this year, a while after it was introduced, it also started to allow for a chat feature. And if you don't like that, you can find other similar versions. I think about veterans. I think about people who are first responders. And with a little bit of online searching, you can find hotlines and text lines and chat lines for people who have similar experiences to you that you can get support from.
Well, and I appreciate you being here with us to talk about this very real issue. And I want to use that as a segue. If you need help, if someone in your family needs help, Capillary Human Services is in this business to help you and those that you love, those that you care about, your friends, your family. And so if there's something we can do to help you, professionals like John and many others that we have here who are highly trained and also just very approachable, very friendly, we want to help you. And so if it's that time for you that you feel like you need help, please do make a call, 925-1906, and someone will be glad to help you always. And so I just want to thank you again, John, for talking about this issue, the very real issue of the holiday blues, which we hope will be minimized this year, and people will find a way to find happiness, maybe in some instances lower your expectations. Attend things with an expectation that just being there and letting it unfold and maybe have some pleasant surprises along the way is a healthy approach to do that.
Plan ahead. Plan for your success. That's the message I'd like people to get from this is, make sure you have access to the phone numbers or the text lines that you need ahead of time. Make sure that you build in some time for you to rest and recharge.
Good.
Plan ahead.
Good. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we welcome you to join us again next time on Two Chairs, the Conversation.